The story begins by showing an illegal powder manufacturing factory. At the same time, the police are already on site conducting a raid. In the midst of the operation, one of the factory workers is seen attempting to dispose of chemical waste into the river. Although the police try to stop him, the hazardous liquid is already released and flows along the rivers of the Louisiana forest. The narrative then shifts its focus to a brilliant biology student at one of the largest universities in America named Kyle. She is currently grieving the sudden death of her brother, who passed away from a heart attack. As her final tribute, she intends to scatter his cremation ashes in the Florida Keys, a small island he loved the most, according to his last wish before he died.
Kyle! Oh my God! Hi, Alice! Oh my God, I missed you so much!
After finishing her class, Kyle is picked up by her old friend Alice. It turns out they have agreed to go together to scatter the ashes. When Alice tells her that someone else is waiting outside, Kyle is immediately confused, as the original plan was only the two of them. However, with no other option but to go along with Alice's decision, they are joined by Malika and Sam in the same car. Seeing Kyle visibly uncomfortable with Malika and Sam's presence, Alice finally admits that her car was sold by her mother the previous night. Her mother is a heavy gambler. Because of this, Alice deliberately invited Malika and Sam so that they could have transportation, allowing their plan to go to the Florida Keys to proceed as intended.
No smoking. I forgot.
Upon arriving at a hotel, Alice notices Kyle is still overwhelmed with grief over her brother's death and reminds her that she must start learning to let go. However, Kyle refuses to accept that, feeling no one truly understands her pain and that people too easily forget those they once loved.
Kyle.
The next day, Kyle, Alice, Malika, and Sam continued their journey. They stopped for a moment at a rest area to have chicken porridge for breakfast. Before entering, Kyle accidentally noticed a newspaper whose front page was filled entirely with reports about recent crocodile attacks. Her attention was suddenly drawn away when an old man warned her not to wander near the river if she didn't want something terrible to happen.
Kyle, let's go.
Instead of driving straight to the Florida Keys, Malika led them to a private airport that had long been out of operation. This immediately made everyone wonder what Malika was actually planning. It turned out that Malika had never flown in a plane in her entire life, and she intended to continue their journey by air so they could reach the island faster, even though she knew very well that Kyle was terrified of heights.
Welcome to Frank Airlines.
Frank, that was his name, a heavy drunkard and the owner of the airport. Judging from his behavior, they weren't sure whether Frank was reliable or just another tourist scammer. However, since Malika had already paid for their tickets at a cheap price, and because there were other tourists preparing to leave, they eventually gathered the courage to board the plane.
Excuse me, sir, but you need to switch your phone off.
Yeah, 50.
Long story short, they were now in the air. The passengers became uncomfortable because a man was talking on his phone during the flight. It wasn't without reason. Aside from being prohibited, no one wanted anything bad to happen while they were flying. The plane was cramped, hot, smelled of sweat, and was filled with various other discomforts. Yet the man continued chatting on his phone without any regard for everyone's safety. He had been warned but still acted as he pleased. An older man who was running out of patience eventually decided to teach him a lesson.
Come on!
Mayday, mayday, mayday!
But now, here they were, stranded in a river with the plane completely wrecked. There were no fatalities in the crash, though several passengers suffered serious injuries. In addition, 2 people were missing, including the co-pilot. While waiting for the search and rescue team to arrive, they tried to treat one another's wounds.
Ray! Ray!
what he was doing was pointless. She suggested they wait for a rescue team and leave the search to the professionals. However, something shocking happened when Frank finally admitted that their flight was illegal. Frank couldn't even guarantee that any rescue team would come, let alone arriving. The SAR team didn't even know that Frank had taken off in the first place.
If the black box wasn't on, no one knows that we're here.
She's right.
Being an intelligent girl who loved reading, Kyle added that they were currently in the largest tropical forest area in America. Even if the rescue team knew the location of the crash, the chances of finding them were extremely small. Therefore, Kyle advised everyone not to place their hopes on the rescue team. What mattered most right now was finding a sheltered place to rest.
Walk.
Maybe northeast.
Now I feel better that we have a solid plan.
After a long debate, Kyle told everyone to look for anything that might be useful, whether food, flashlights, knives, power supplies, coats, umbrellas, underwear, vegetables, sugar, salt, honey, or anything else, rather than blaming one another and arguing over unimportant matters. While everyone was busy searching for items that could still be used, Alice accidentally noticed something behind the bushes not far from the crash site. Curious, she went to check and discovered a nest filled with several crocodile eggs of considerable size. Not long after, the co-pilot who had previously gone missing suddenly appeared in the middle of the river, screaming for help. Frank, worried about his friend's life, immediately jumped into the water, followed by Kyle and Sam, who also intending for help. However, their efforts were in vain. The co-pilot was devoured and dragged underwater by a massive crocodile. The horrifying sight left everyone in shock. Kyle quickly instructed everyone to move away and leave the river area at once. After walking quite a distance, an elderly woman admitted that she was extremely tired and could no longer continue. Kyle politely asked everyone to stop and rest for a moment. However, Malika, who had been annoyed since the beginning, assumed that Kyle only wanted to be seen as the leader of the group.
Whatever.
In the middle of the night, when everyone was fast asleep, one of the men woke up because he needed to relieve himself. While he was in a comfortable position, his phone suddenly rang, signaling an incoming call. Shocked, he hurriedly reached for his phone as he had not received any signal since the crash. But then...
Hello, Damien, it's Rufus. Can you hear me?
The next morning, Kyle and the others were shocked to find crocodile tracks and the man's body torn apart. This puzzled Kyle. Why didn't the crocodile eat him and instead only killed him? After all, crocodiles typically attack only when they are hungry. They then continued searching for a damp place to hide.
You got any ideas? Frank.
There's been rumors.
Frank proceeded to tell them about a rumor circulating among the locals. It was said that the crocodiles living in that river were behaving strangely. Normally, crocodiles would flee upon seeing or hearing humans. However, the crocodiles in this river did the exact opposite. They reacted aggressively, went berserk, and were willing to travel long distances just to chase humans, not to eat them, but simply to kill.
The cabin or something.
Hey, I think that'll give us an vantage point. At least we can see what's coming.
Shortly after, Alice spotted an old building not far from their location. They immediately headed toward it, hoping to use it as a resting place and a shelter from crocodile attacks that could occur at any moment. Along the way, Kyle realized that numerous crocodiles had surrounded them from all directions. She instructed the elderly woman in front not to move, just stay still until the crocodiles left. It was not without reason. Crocodiles are extremely sensitive to sudden movements and sound. However, just as they were formulating a plan to escape, the situation grew even more chaotic. Once they reached the old building, they quickly went inside and shut the door tightly. Instead of helping Kyle and the others hold the door shut to prevent the crocodiles from entering, Malika, still irritated from the very beginning, wandered off to search for another exit, kicking down any door she found along the way. From her actions, it became clear that Malika was selfish and only cared about saving herself. Night eventually fell. The crocodiles still refused to leave and remained outside the shack, waiting. Kyle, worried for everyone's safety, instructed the group to take turns sleeping and keeping watch, just in case the crocodiles tried breaking down the door again. Late that night, Kyle tended to one of her friends, let's call her Zoe, whose leg had been injured after being bitten by one of the crocodiles. Zoe's condition appeared dire, as she had lost a great deal of blood. With no medical supplies available, Kyle could only suppress the bleeding using whatever cloth she could find.
I think we should take turns taking watch.
After treating Zoe and letting her rest, Kyle was approached by Sam, who showed her a map he had found in a drawer. According to Sam, the map depicted their current location. If the map was accurate, there was a large abandoned building approximately 3 miles from where they were. They decided to head there, hoping someone might be able to help them, or at the very least, that they might find a working telephone.
It's going to ignore the fact that this is like 4 miles in the wrong direction, not to mention that
Unwilling to accept the decision, Malika, the troublemaker, once again caused a scene by provoking everyone to stay rather than walking 3 miles to chase after a building whose existence she doubted. In truth, her objections were nothing more than an excuse. Malika was exhausted and physically incapable of continuing the journey. It wasn't just you who felt annoyed. Everyone stranded there was growing increasingly irritated by Malika's big mouth. At last, Frank spoke up. He supported Kyle's decision and stated that he, along with the others, agreed to leave and begin preparing. As for Malika, if she wanted to join them, she could, and if not, that was her choice. Before departing, Kyle, who had some knowledge of crocodile behavior, gave instructions on what to do if a crocodile suddenly attacked. After packing and arming themselves with whatever makeshift weapons they could find, they began their journey toward the building shown on the map. Along the way, Zoe, whose leg was injured, complained that the pain was getting worse. She asked her husband, Dom, to stop so she could rest for a moment. At that point, Malika once again caused trouble by urging the others to abandon Zoe and Dom, claiming they would only become a burden. However, since everyone already knew Malika's true nature, not a single person paid attention to her words. While resting, Sam reopened the map to estimate their current location. According to what he read, the path to the building required them to cross a river that now stood directly in front of them. With no other route available, they decided to build a raft large enough to carry the entire group across.
Do you want me to stay with her?
Please. Put it down.
While some of them remained at the riverbank collecting vines or anything that could serve as rope to tie the logs together, Alice, Frank, and Sam ventured into the forest to gather more logs, as the ones they had were insufficient. Shortly after Frank and Sam returned carrying the logs, Alice accidentally discovered a crocodile lurking behind the bushes.
Where's Alice?
Acting quickly, she stabbed the creature with the sharpened wooden stake she carried, then hurried back to the others and urged them to leave at once, as the crocodiles were beginning to sense their presence. Zoe, realizing she could no longer endure the pain or continue the journey, decided to sacrifice herself for the safety of Dom and the rest of the group. With heavy hearts, the others left her behind. After traveling down the river on their raft for quite some time, Kyle and the others finally found the building marked on the map. This was where the audience would be shocked, because the building they had been searching for turned out to be the illegal powder manufacturing factory shown at the beginning of the film.
Hello?
Since the building was quite large, they decided to split up and explore every room. Kyle, Sam, and Dom would inspect the lower floor. Meanwhile, the others went upstairs to see if there was anyone they could ask for help. Searching for a while, Kyle arrived in the room where the illegal powder had been produced. And sure enough, they found barrels containing a purple chemical waste that had spilled everywhere. Kyle suspected that this was the very substance that had contaminated the crocodiles, causing their aggressive behavior. Moments later, an injured young man appeared out of nowhere. Kyle quickly helped him and asked what was happening. Unfortunately, the young man died before he could say anything, having lost too much blood.
He's gone.
Upstairs, Frank and the rest were still wandering around, searching for a working telephone or radio. Frank and Malika went toward the front section of the ceiling, while Alice was sent to check the back room alone. Once again, Malika stirred up trouble, this time trying to convince Frank to abandon everyone else and escape with her. Fed up, Frank finally snapped and pushed Malika down the stairs. But just then, a crocodile suddenly appeared and attacked Frank, causing him to fall as well. Malika, who miraculously survived, screamed for help at the top of her lungs. Her cries were heard by Kyle and the others, prompting them to rush upstairs and rescue her.
It's okay. You're safe.
Not wanting any more casualties, Kyle urged everyone to leave the place through the back door. By chance, they found a telephone lying in the corner of the room. However, another problem arose. The path they needed to take was filled with muddy pits, which turned out to be crocodile nests. Slowly but surely, each of them managed to cross the muddy pits without waking the sleeping crocodiles. But when it was Sam's turn, he slipped and accidentally crushed one of the crocodile eggs. Kyle immediately called 911 for help and finally received confirmation that assistance was on the way. They only needed to reach an open area so they could be easily located. Yet another problem emerged. A crocodile appeared and blocked the exit. Alice tried to distract it using one of the crocodile eggs. But she was instead bitten and violently thrashed until she lost consciousness, followed by Dom, who was also rendered helpless. Fortunately, Kyle managed to shoot the crocodile and divert its attention. Just as the crocodile was about to attack again, Kyle noticed a nearby container of highly flammable chemicals. Long story short, morning finally arrived. After all the horrific events, Kyle was at last able to fulfill her duty of scattering her brother's ashes in the Florida Keys in peace. Meanwhile, elsewhere on the island, Frank was shown to have survived the crocodile attack from the night before. However, his relief did not last long. A pack of crocodiles began closing in, ready to make him their final meal, and thus